Hey friends, welcome back. Episode 2 right here. And so there's a real lot to unpack. Episode 1 was dropped yesterday, which was October 15th, right? Am I getting that right? I hope that's right. Anyways, today's the 16th. And I'd sort of prematurely spoke about the Rolling Stone interview in which clips of the interview were released with Alex Van Halen. And a lot of it centered around, David Lee Roth is the reason why the whole reunion didn't happen. And I'm sure Roth has his side of the story, although it's kind of difficult for me to think about what may be his side of the story. I mean, you don't become a phenomenal kind of like archetype lead singer unless you've got some serious me issues, right? It's inherent, I think, with the position, at least from that particular, I guess, that crop of musicians from that time era. Maybe not so much anymore, but I don't know. I'm just speaking blah, blah. Anywho, I did have an opportunity to read the entirety of the Rolling Stone interview, which was released. It was actually released yesterday. I just unbeknownst to me, I was only able to, whatever news source I was sourcing at that time, only had a little bit of what the interview was. But holy moly, this thing is chock full of just so many things to unpack. I'm just going to speak off the cuff here. I don't have any notes and stuff, and you're probably recognizing, of course you don't, because there's not much continuity to this, but bear with me here. I'm going to try to go over some of the highlights that I remember from that. And, to start off, it talks about, his health, that is Alex Van Halen's health. The big question was, why this guy sell all his drums? Going back a few months ago, there was a massive sale or auction of his equipment, which it kind of baffled a lot of people. Like, what is he doing? Is he retiring? What's going on? And little did anyone know, I don't think anybody knew at all, he just can't really play anymore. The article hints now that he's just starting to get practice pads going again. But he had a major spine issue that dates back to childhood. If you know anything about sort of the Van Halen story, none of it includes injury as far as the beginnings of it, but Eddie Van Halen talks about Alex falling out of a treehouse at some point and really hurting himself. And then there are a few incidences that kind of went along as they matured. There was something to do with a water skiing incident, and then something else. And then in adulthood, Alex had hurt himself picking up his son and putting him up on his shoulders. And a few vertebrae in his neck kind of weren't liking what was that condition of the son sitting on his neck. Maybe Eric, I think is his son's name. Anyhow, that resulted in him wearing a neck brace for the 1995 Balance Tour. And then it seemed as though it was resolved because in subsequent tours, you didn't see the neck brace anymore. But the article talks about his injury and how more recently in 2022, he was out at the shooting range with some friends, and I think there was a kickback with the rifle or something and knocked him back, and he essentially broke his back, which resulted in him being, I think, immobile. He said he spent his time on his back looking at the ceiling for the better part of a year. And then there was the earlier parts of this year, 2024, where he was selling off pretty substantial drum stuff and things associated with him making music, percussion and all the rest. So that kind of, at least for me, kind of clarified it a little bit, like why all that stuff was going. But the article is like packed with the possibility of AI reproducing Eddie Van Halen guitar solos for possible future releases of unreleased material. I'm going to voice my opinion. Don't do that. I don't think that's a good idea. The idea of Van Halen is, to me, a sort of a pure music thing, in that the purity lies in the individual human elements that constitute the band. And I think that would really ruin it if you try to go in that direction. Alex Van Halen kind of seemed all over the place in the interview as far as a variety of topics. AI is one. At some point maybe I'll talk more about that one in future episodes. The possibility of future Van Halen music with Alex playing drums and Ed playing guitar, but additional guitar parts being recreated by computer programs. I hope not. I mean, I'll admit it may be interesting to hear, but no. I think if there was a choice to be made and they said, hey, Elton, you make the choice, I think I would kind of veto it. I would want releases from Van Halen as incomplete releases, because he does mention that there's a lot of music that is in pieces and that they're not formed into full songs. I would much rather hear that than an AI program trying to recreate Eddie Van Halenisms. It doesn't sit right with me. I mean, does that sit right with you? Maybe it does. For me, it doesn't. Other things that were talked about, this whole thing that just plagues the Van Halen universe of just having discontent with frontmen is, I always thought you get older, you get wiser, things kind of smooth out, but it seems like grudges and just differences hold more steadfast, it seems, at least within this universe. This book that Alex Van Halen is going to be releasing soon only goes up to about 1984 and 1985, so from childhood until that point. And in the article, he won't even mention Sammy Hagar's name. Now, love Sammy Hagar or not, he is part of the Van Halen canon, and some would argue an important part of the canon that allowed the band to exist at least another decade beyond the Roth years. I mean, who else would have fronted the band without David Lee Roth at that time? And I mean, you could throw other names in there, but it's undeniable the success they had. Whether you liked the music or didn't like the music, they were still very viable and prominent within the music the industry, for sure. He doesn't even mention Sam. And it seems as though the grudge that has been kind of formulated since '96 had never resolved itself. In fact, it seems to be pretty fervent now, given the limited tone in the article, in that he doesn't even want to mention. He says the core creative essence of that band, Van Halen, lies with Edward, with himself, Alex, David Lee Roth, and I'm so glad that he mentioned Michael Anthony. I mean, that could be a whole nother, and it will be a whole nother episode that I could do, just my thoughts on the treatment of Michael Anthony and just kind of what his ultimate sort of last years in Van Halen became. Just terrible stuff. I think you don't treat anyone like that. I mean, renegotiate contracts and all that stuff, but you don't speak ill of Michael Anthony. The guy has never said a negative word about Van Halen or his involvement in Van Halen. He's always taken the high road and has always been very positive, even in the very lean years of the Van Halen band into the early 2000s and stuff. But anyways, so that article addresses the essence of what the band is, and Alex says it was the Roth years that are the substantial years, and anything else seemed to be awash in his mind. He also talks about the singers that were possibilities after Gary Cherone had left, and he doesn't mention Cherone either, but Ozzy, of all the singers, my goodness, all day I've been thinking about what Van Halen would sound like with Ozzy, and he sort of makes the analogy that a cat is a cat, and you wouldn't expect a cat to be a dog. And then he references, well, Ozzy would be Ozzy. We wouldn't expect him to be anyone but Ozzy. And the fact that they had a meeting, and that the TV show called The Osbournes that ended up becoming sort of the thrust of what Ozzy Osbourne was known for a whole generation of kids, is that wacky old guy on TV who's yelling Sharon all the time, without them knowing that he has this whole back catalog of Black Sabbath and then his music career. But that's what stopped, or at least put the brakes on for that time frame, what would have been involvement with Van Halen. And it was corroborated by Ozzy, because they reached out to Ozzy, and I say they, Rolling Stone magazine goes to follow up some of the statements Alex made with trying to, get some more substantiation. And indeed, through email, Ozzy said, yeah, we met, and I kind of regret that nothing happened of it. So there's that. There's a whole host of other things that are just kind of escaping me right now. My concern with the book, because I'm really looking forward to it coming out, is that that there will be a negativity in parts of it, and I hope that it's not written in that vein at all. Alex Van Halen to me is a bit mercurial, right? And that's a big word. Kind of unpredictable. At some points in the interview, he seems like the loving brother. Other times, he does sort of come across as a bully. I'll just say it. There we go. I said it. And maybe that played in part to an advantage at times, being the protector of his younger brother, Eddie Van Halen, and, kind of keeping outside forces at bay as much as you can. But, I would imagine there's another side to it. But they also talk about how David Lee Roth had made comments about Wolfgang more recently in 2024 that were, they weren't favorable. He had some pretty choice, unflattering things to say about Wolf. And Alex says that that's kind of like David Lee Roth acknowledging, this is weird, I didn't get this at all, that Wolf is sort of on the level with them, and that it's not a problem, and he really didn't mean anything by it. That's not how I took it. I listened to the clips that Roth had related about issues and situations with Wolfgang, and there's not one point where it seems like he was just kind of taking the piss out of him just to take the piss out of him for the heck of it. It was downright sort of something in the very much in the arena of just plain negative and just not cool. But he's kind of on the level of that. And, again, from what I referenced from episode 1, if you happen to catch that at all, blaming David Lee Roth for the whole thing not taking part, the whole Eddie Van Halen tribute. And that it ended pretty acrimoniously, man. They were it ended bad. But even with that, he says that he's still in touch with David Lee Roth thereafter. Now, I don't know in what regard they're in touch. I don't think it's buddy-buddy stuff. He goes on to say that he related to Roth better than anyone else in the band, and he was closer to Roth than anyone in the band. But I would imagine maybe it's because of Van Halen business that they carry on a relationship beyond just all the self-destructive, self-imploding stuff that happens with this band. I just really wish that things would go smoothly with Van Halen at some point. Even with Eddie Van Halen's death, there is no peace within this Van Halen universe. It really is a sad thing. And that's kind of my 2 cents for what it's worth. This is Elton's 15. Again, I'm Elton. If you're still watching at this point, well, cool. Wow, awesome. This channel is mostly music, news, and it'll also be sometimes me kind of, playing a little bit, and anything else related to music, but the most of it will be the thrust of what is music news. I've only talked about Van Halen back to back for these first 2 episodes because that's what's most current in the news. And it just happens to be one of my favorite bands. And yes, I'm wearing the Fair Warning t-shirt right there. It comes out once in a while. Well, thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to catch you for the next episode. Thank you.